Okay, so as I said, I will begin with Konstantin Melnikov, and then we'll talk about Sir Richard Rogers. So happy birthday, Konstantin Melnikov. He was born on this day, the 22nd of July in 1890. I don't know if in the old calendar exactly what the date was, but maybe, let's see. So actually, I made a mistake. Well, it's not really a mistake. In the old, system of counting time, it was July 22nd, but actually it's August 3rd using this calendar. Anyway, we'll talk about him today. So Konstantin Melnikov, 1890, 1974, a very important Russian architect. I truly admire him. So Konstantin Stepanovich Melnikov was a Russian architect and painter. His architectural work compressed into a single decade, 1923 to 1933. So he actually worked only for 10 years, placed Melnikov on the front end of the 1920s avant-garde architecture. Although associated with the constructivists, Melnikov was an independent artist, not bound by the rules of a particular style or artistic group. In 1930s, Melnikov refused to conform with the rising Stalinist architecture, withdrew from practice and worked as a portraitist and teacher until the end of his life. A tragic life, I would say. Konstantin Melnikov was born and died in Moscow. He was the fourth child of the family. His father, Stepan Ilarionovich Melnikov, originally from Novgorod region, was a road maintenance foreman employed by the Moscow Agricultural Academy. His mother came from the peasants of this district, Svenigorod. The whole family occupied a single room of a state-managed working-class barrack in Haylodge, and then a quiet northern suburb of Moscow. Melnikov tried hard to rise above bitter poverty, to return to farming, and eventually relocated to their own small house and set their own dairy farm. Konstantin Melnikov later praised his father, who noticed the little boy's addiction to drawing and regularly brought him scrap paper for drawing from the academy. However, all the education they could afford was a 2-year parish school, completed in 1903. Konstantin met his golden day in life through a milk delivery woman who happened to serve the family of Vladimir Chaplin, a wealthy engineer. She recommended Konstantin's drawings to Chaplin, who was so impressed that he hired the teenager to his firm and paid for his art studies. Chaplin overestimated Melnikov's basic education, and Konstantin failed his grammar test at the Moscow School of Painting, Sculpture, and Architecture in 1904. 1 year later, he passed the admissions that selected a class of 11 out of 270 applicants. Melnikov studied at the school for 12 years, first completing general education in 1910, then graduating in arts 1914 and architecture 1917. Despite Chaplin's calls to concentrate on architecture, Melnikov leaned to painting. By the time he joined the architecture classes, he already was a well-recognized portrait painter. To be honest with you, it does move me, this biography, and that's why I allow myself to read it, because I think he's an example, as a child living in poverty, in difficult conditions. You have to imagine a whole family living in one single room. And he arrived at excellence, not just in Moscow, not just in Russia, but also in Paris. So we are going to see the works of these remarkable men. And I think if this kind of man is not an example, of course, the level of indifference here is infuriating me every single day. But fortunately, there were in the world, and there are in the world, people who were not indifferent and who fought with poverty, who were not spoiled, and they achieved great, great results. And Konstantin Melnikov deserves our applause for this. This was the man. And you have to imagine, he was accused later on as being a bourgeois architect, when in fact, he was an avant-garde artist and architect, and he was actually having a very, very poor upbringing. So there was nothing bourgeois about his life. Although he does look here a little bit, but maybe we romanticize the attire of those times. Anyway, I truly admire Konstantin Melnikov. And here he is as an old man in his remarkable private house he built for himself in Moscow, and we are going to see in detail. Truly a remarkable artist and architect. So Konstantin Melnikov was born to a peasant family in Moscow in 1890. Through the efforts of the engineers to whom he was apprenticed, he attended the Moscow School of Painting, Sculpture, and Architecture. Although he initially studied painting, when he entered the school in 1905, he studied architecture from 1912. We already read this, until he completed his studies in 1917. Drawings. Yes, such a drawing even today would be considered extravagant and so-called avant-garde. These are probably studied for his own house, which he built. Really, I truly believe people like Melnikov are great mentors and great source of inspiration. In our country, all the time I'm being told, we are poor, we cannot do this, we cannot do that. Well, how was Russia at the beginning of the 20th century? Especially in the case of this man who came from very poor upbringing. So we should stop excusing ourselves that we are poor. We are not poor. Romania is not such a poor country at all. We're just spoiled, we like to lament, la volupté de l'échec. We can do much more than we do, but we have to change something in our mentality, the Miorița mentality, where the sheep was more courageous than the shepherd. Yes, because in Miorița, as you remember, Miorița, encouraged the peasant, the shepherd to fight or to run. And instead, the shepherd chose to just allow himself to be killed. And this says a lot about us. I mean, really, we should reflect on this. Miorița, which is the basic myth of our spirituality and psychological frame of mind. In Miorița, the sheep is more courageous than the shepherd. I know that Nikita Stănescu had different interpretations about it, but I don't know. Anyway, drawings by Konstantin Melnikov, back to this Russian man born in poor circumstances and arriving at the top of architecture in a country which had remarkable architects and artists. 1923, this pavilion for the all Russian agricultural and handicraft industries, but it was destroyed, but we still have this picture. And I love this. This is a good building. This is architecture, and it's done modestly. It was demolished. It was done with wood, as you can see. But it doesn't matter. It's architecture, and the spirit of architecture is alive in this building. And that's why I keep saying we should stop excusing ourselves for not having sufficient money and so on. It's not that. It's not about the money. It's about the spirit of the work. If the spirit of the work is alive and intense, then you can do a lot with very little money. This is my conviction. I mean, really, how much this building do you think costed? I mean, but it's architecture. And it's architecture because the one who did it was an architect. That is, he deserved the name an architect. And for that time, it was an innovative building. 1924, 1925, this market, this was also, well, you know, it says it was destroyed, but I saw pictures which are not too old, as you can see here, the fragment of this car. Uh, this building, I don't know, sometimes the information is as it is. Anyway, we can look at it. I mean, it's the deteriorated building, but it's still standing. 1924, 1925, office of New Sukharev Market in Moscow. Now the competition entry for the USSR pavilion at the Exposition Internationale des Arts Décoratifs and Industriels Modernes in Paris. This was destroyed, and it is a shame because it was a great building, but we'll arrive at it. A bus garage. This one was refurbished, and I'm glad that it was. So somehow, you know, refurbished doesn't look so authentic, but you know, maybe the refurbishment. No, I think, I imagine, I hope it was done properly. An interesting plan, actually, because you wouldn't expect it to, you know, to have these diagonals within the plan. The Russians even now have ambitions in the field of architecture to be in the front line of architectural research and so on. I mentioned this before. They have a very, very innovative architecture school, which is called Strelka, where people like Rem Koolhaas go a few times a year there to teach and so on. So they are really pushing the frontiers of architecture. And I think we can learn from Moscow as well. You know, why is it they can do it and we can't? Why can't we have such a school of architecture in Romania? Now, this is the pavilion that I mentioned, I read before. He won the competition and he built it in 1925. So he was 35 years old, and it was one of the most remarkable buildings in this world exhibition, if not the most remarkable. Look at this. I mean, if this building was built today, it would be considered hot or cool, and it would be published on the most famous websites or you know, e-magazines and so on. It was made in 1925, almost 100 years ago. By whom? By Konstantin Melnikov, the son of peasants' parents, you know, peasant parents. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in what conditions you are born. If you have something to say, you say it. I mean, after all, we have Konstantin Brâncuș also now, another Konstantin. Well, in what circumstances was Konstantin Brâncuș born? He left for Paris on foot. That's how he left for Paris. And he revolutionized culture. So those who excuse themselves that they're either born in difficult conditions or circumstances, or that they don't have luck, come on, it's not really about luck. It's about how much intensity you put in your work and how much love, essentially. Because Frank Lloyd Wright was indeed right. Talent is good, practice is better, passion is best. If you have passion, you can go far. It doesn't matter. You are poor, you are short, you are even physical problems, you can do it. Maybe I'm too optimistic today, but I do believe that nothing can stop the genius. If the genius exists and you don't betray it, you know, you can do a lot. It doesn't matter. You are born in a rich Western country or in a poor, in Bangladesh, for example. Bangladesh has beautiful architecture today, much of it done with bamboos. They also have modern, mundane even architecture, but I admire that architecture done with simple means, which is great. And Bangladesh is one of the poorest countries in the world, apparently. Anyway, this building by Konstantin Melnikov has to be studied and admired because it looks fresh even from almost 100 years later, meaning from today. And look at the plan and look at the elevation. It's the same spirit in both, although they are not literally, reflecting each other. And again, the power of the diagonals. You'll see later on also a project for a parking he did for Paris. Very, very interesting. It was not built, but I think it should be built. These were the original drawings. A factory club in Moscow. But I don't know, maybe I'll have pictures later on. Sometimes it's difficult to find, pictures or the works were, damaged or destroyed even. Anyway, this building is by him. It's a factory club. Again, the diagonals mean a lot. I mean, these stairs, they are placed in plan diagonally, and where you have a diagonal, there is always a chance for an increased liveliness. Just like in the pavilion in Paris that we just saw. What is a diagonal? In a way, it's a betrayal. No, it's the Judah of architectural planning. It's a traitor, the diagonal. But because of the traitor, you have an increased energy in the building. A traitor in what sense? That it betrays the Cartesian system. A workers' club. This is also an important building by him. Also, when was it done? It doesn't say, but around that time, 1920 something. Well, it looks like they built a lot of workers' clubs. Anyway, I guess they wanted to corrupt the workers, you know, or to emancipate themselves through, I don't know, artistic activities and so on. I mean, I don't think in capitalism too many, you know, corporations are so interested in building workers' clubs. But the Soviets, it seems, at that time, they were interested in this. If just Melnikov built 3 or 4. Look, another factory club. I don't know if it was built. It's a project. It was built. And it's still standing. Maybe it's not so radical as the pavilion in Paris and one of the earlier clubs that we looked at, but still. Now, this is another remarkable building, his own residence, and he had to suffer because of this building because he was accused of having a bourgeois, you know, leaning or a bourgeois state of mind. It's truly a very, very nice building. I don't know who wrote the SOS. It's not part of the building. Maybe it's just some kind of a Photoshop intervention. But the building, you know, is one of the most remarkable private residences really in the history of architecture and, you know, his own residence. Now, you know, the chairs and the bed and you know everything else is somehow you know traditional, so to speak. But the building itself is unique and fresh, architecturally speaking. Look at those windows, and it's also a cylinder. In fact, it's an excellent building. A life dedicated to art, to creativity. That's all we can say. I mean, I look at this studio and it's in no way inferior to the studio, for example, Le Corbusier built for Aux Enfants in Paris. It's really a remarkable building. There are, in fact, 2 cylinders that intersect, kind of like the 2 circles that intersect in a similar way in the Brion Cemetery by Carlos Carpa. It is, in a way, a symbol of wholeness. Now, if he remained entrapped in this apartment, in this building, after he refused to collaborate with the Stalinists, I guess he, you know, it was a very enjoyable prison, if I can call it so. He was a dreamer, that's what he was. Like, I would say, like any true creator. The creators are dreamers. You know, as Oscar Wilde said, we are all in the gutter, but some of us look up to the stars. Well, he looked up to the stars. So the bedrooms are actually on the ground floor, and then I'm a little bit confused here because maybe there was another plan that is not shown here. This building is an event. That's what it is. It is an event. It is different from the building on the left. It is different from the building on the right. The contextualist might say that it doesn't respect the context, but he himself was an event. The man, he was different. He was different than most other people of his country at that time. And the building expresses that difference, that otherness. And it's not an arrogant building, really. It's maybe extravagant for the buildings around it, but it's not arrogant. It's an artist. I mean, he was an artist, and the building expresses the uniqueness of the artist. The artist was not spoiled, and yet he didn't lose hope. And the hope came from his work, from his creativity. "1930, 1931," but I don't have pictures. This is a garage. In a strange way, he built this garage. We saw a previous one before, and he made the plans for one in Paris. So, he was not, spoiled with very cultural programs, but still tried his best to do architecture. Now, the plan of this has something of Claude Nicolas Ledoux. Another garage. What can we say? But it looks like, in a way, like a maison de culture, a house of culture or something. It's a garage. Even a garage, if it's done with creativity and passion, could become architecture. Another garage. This one actually even more dramatic. Can you bring cosmic values into a garage? I guess he felt so somehow. I mean, there is a level of rhetorics here that I mentioned a little earlier, Ledoux. Well, here I could almost mention a little bit Boulet. You know, there is an emphasis on form, on the circle. The power of the circle is remarkable, especially under certain conditions of light and shadow. What exactly is happening behind those, you know, those large windows, I don't know. And now you are going to see a few works that remained just projects. The design for Lenin's sarcophagus. Unfortunately, I cannot verbalize about it because it's hard for me to understand what is happening here. Although maybe not so hard. I mean, you do see a sarcophagus there for the great man for the Soviets. Um, he had futuristic tendencies. Now, the competition entry for the Moscow bureau of the newspaper Leningrad Pravda, maybe he did these works after he was dismissed in a way, or he dismissed himself from having anything to do with the Stalinists, and he kept working on competitions, but they were not built. So this was for Pravda itself an interesting work. I don't see anything bourgeois here, but you know, that's maybe it was the accusation of envy, you know, for the house he built for himself. Interesting, the way he depicts in this drawing these two people, maybe having you know, shouting at each other, but I don't know, it's rather humorous, the posture, the positioning of these two men. Anyway, a competition entry for the monument of Christopher Columbus in Santo Domingo. Not the most modest project on earth, it's true. Competition entry for the Palace of the Soviets. The project was awarded to Boris Yofan and Vladimir Shukov, never built. The Corbusier also participated in this competition and he didn't win. Anyway, 1932, 1933, sorry for the resolution of these images. Rather fantastic, the project. I'm not surprised it was rejected. another building, another competition entry for Red Square in Moscow, 1934. You see already his trademark, the placement of the stairways, diagonally, and yes, the presence of the diagonal is continuously felt and seen. In a way, his professional life was tragic, for a man of his talent and his accomplishments. He only worked practically for, I don't know, 15 years or so, and he lived a long life. But you see, even his projects mean something. And now I end the presentation on Konstantin Melnikov with these two parking garages in Paris, which are, I think, very interesting, but they were not built. And again, we see his style, so to speak, his way of doing architecture. But it's also interesting in this case how, he places these supporting men, inclined themselves diagonally above the Seine, above the river. Now the plan is a little bit cryptical for me, but it's about the functionality of within the garage. Interesting drawings. A garage for 100 vehicles, 1,000 vehicles, incredible. But look at the abstractness of the scheme, which is beautiful even graphically. He was a visionary. I mean, who would do something like this for a garage, or like this? Bravo to him. Too bad was not built. If it was built, it would have been one of the best buildings in Paris. Okay, so let's wish him happy birthday.